Welcome back to The Full View. Now, many of us are entering a short week. Human Rights Day will be commemorated on Thursday in remembrance of the Sharpeville massacre on the 21st of March in 1960. 69 people were killed in the township south of Johannesburg when apartheid police opened fire on thousands protesting against past laws. Many were shot in the back. Well, government has organised month-long commemorations, this year focusing on the promotion and preservation of indigenous languages as a human right. To discuss, we're joined by the Director General of the Department of Arts and Culture, Vusumuzi Mkhize. Thank you for being with us, Mr. Mkhize. Is the focus on indigenous languages because we have all these official languages, but many people are not using their mother tongue, sometimes deferring to English or Afrikaans, maybe because they have to?
No, thanks very much, Francis. The very sole purpose of this is to elevate again that human rights issue is not limited to only a few aspects of our constitution. The Bill of Rights talks to our humanity, being one of the issues, the issue of indigenous languages, languages that were previously undermined. And the Constitution instructs and enjoins us in Section 6 to really uplift and promote these languages. And unfortunately, there has been a challenge of a mindset, more than anything, of resisting use of the indigenous languages at various levels, even by our own communities. But government has done and put measures in place to promote the preservation of these languages, but also develop them and then make sure that their utility is of value.
Well, what is government's role to promote languages? Because we can say, let's all do this. What is your role?
Firstly, the legislation is in place, which promotes and protects the indigenous languages. Secondly, out of the legislation, there is what we call PEN-SALP, which focuses mainly really on all languages, but in particular development of the African languages that were marginalized so that they are developed. And then Department of Arts and Culture within its mandate is key to it is to have the language development as a focal area. And that is why we've got a language unit in the department, and we're working with the universities to develop what we call terminologies, because one of the problems is that we, in South Africa, we think sometimes that the African languages have no scientific value. We think they cannot carry knowledge. We think they have no emotions. And we end up resorting to the dominant language, which is English. And that is unfortunate because we need to change that mindset about the value of these languages. But to do that, government has to develop also within its own ambit the issue of terminologies that must be used, utilization of these, enforced use of these languages in government work itself. That is why we've got what we also regard in 2012.
So this is so interesting, because since we declared 11 official languages, people have been asking the obvious question, how can government support 11 languages? Because you can't even put 11 languages on official documents where all our official languages should be. Maybe it'll just be too long. So are you looking for other creative ways? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. The promotion of languages, in the essence of it is that firstly, we as leaders must be able to use and quote using our indigenous languages, because it creates sense of self-confidence and self-worth. So one of the alternative means is that in terms of legislation, all government departments, because these languages are not dominant everywhere. Therefore, if I'm in Gauteng, you, in consultation with your citizens, because the Section 6B of the Constitution is very clear around this area. Therefore, then in municipalities, you know which languages are dominant. So we start from there and neutralize those languages. So if I'm in Limpopo, there is a dominance of a language of, let's say it's the language of Shangaan or Tsonga. Let us make sure that that municipality, among the official languages it uses, is that. If I'm in KZN, I know that there is dominance of Zulu or Xhosa. Free State uniquely has got almost dominance of most of these languages. So government business must be conducted in line with promotion of the indigenous languages.
What would you say to the business community? So it's there's a search for commonality because some of them are working across the country, even across many countries, and often it is unfair, but English becomes the deferred language because more people speak it across a broader situation, location. What would you say about that? Is it a problem, or is that something we can live with?
No, it's a problem if it undermines the use of the indigenous languages and that development, because then we hide behind the use of English because we are saying it's the only means of communication. But if you look at Russia, you look at China, they have grown and become powerhouses in this world. They use their own language. There is nothing wrong, and empirical evidence proves that if I use my language at a formative years as a child, I am then able to be more productive, and I'm able to learn more quicker. So even within our education system, the issue is that we must make sure that the use at formative years of the home languages, indigenous languages, is promoted, and that we teach our kids in that context. At this stage, there is a sense of less self-worth because we're thinking English is the language. But English grew because its own speakers decided to focus on its growth.
And I've heard parents even scared that their children will lose their mother tongue. It's that serious. But now, what would you say to a Khoisan who would say, how can this be government's focus when that language, their language, has not even been recognized?
No, the language of Khoisan is recognized. Remember, our own, if you look at our the approach now government is using to engage with the Khoisan communities, one of theirs was the mandate for PENSAL to engage in developing the Khoisan, the Nama, the San languages. And therefore, there is work being done already in relation to that, because they are part of the indigenous people of this country. In fact, they are among the very first. And therefore, promoting their language sends a message to them, but also to all other languages that will spare no effort in developing these languages. That's why currently we are offering bursaries as a department, collaborating with the universities to develop things like lexicology, so that people can use these terms that are in African languages, develop the dictionaries that will translate so that you are able to switch. But if I'm always forced to always think in English, I will translate what I'm thinking in English, but I am a Zulu-speaking person, it also tarred my progress of response, my processes of thinking, my emotions when I want to express them. That is why this area of indigenous languages as a human right has become critical, and that it cannot be something that is taken as a side issue. So,
Director General, we live in a country where children still go to schools where there are pit toilets. Some are dying in those pit toilets. Some people affected, not receiving medical treatment because of power issues. In a country like that, is a focus on language not maybe easy while important, but not looking at the very hard realities around human rights?
But who are you without your language? That should be the first question we should ask. Because language is my identity. It transfers my heritage, my traditions. It tells me about who I am. So I may go to a toilet that has got everything, which is correct, but at the end of the day, I have no identity. I have a split personality because my thinking processes have entrenched a sense that on a language that is foreign, but my identity is different. We need to make sure that South Africa's problems cannot be resolved overnight, of course, but at the end of the day, there's matters that are really at the heart of our citizens' identity, for them to feel that I'm proudly South African, but also I'm proud of my language, makes me who I am. Then I can participate in the life of society much more productively.
Fair enough. Now, in your press release, there's also something else. You point to this idea that Human Rights Month can help foster social cohesion, nation building, and to combat intolerance. So obviously the big news coming out of New Zealand, that terror attack, many looking at policy in Australia, where one of the perpetrators was saying increasingly government, maybe even dangerously, is talking about immigration. And I just want to know, because in an election year we're hearing more and more around immigration. The fear is that people from other African countries. Is there any fear in your department that we're losing that tolerance?
There is a concern that sometimes xenophobic attacks would arise. We know that there would be a pointing of fingers to the foreign nationals, but it's something that we are working hard to make sure that through our social cohesion advocates that we have throughout the country, the issues of tolerance must be there, but we must not use incidents that are few and far in between as defining the response of South Africans to foreign nationals, because then we are generalizing as something that is extremely dangerous. But our call will be that even political leadership, in their use and tone, it must be clear that it should not at any level be seen to be promoting anti-immigrants. And remember, immigrants in this country have been there for years through building the very same Johannesburg that we have as migrant laborers. So South Africa has lived in coexistence, and our policy, foreign policy, is very clear about how we are connected to Africa, and Africans are our brothers and sisters.
Now, we're running out of time, but my final question for you. 1960 was a long time ago now, when many of the born frees even were not even thought about. How do you think we as a country should be remembering those terrible events in Sharpeville in 1960?
We think throughout South Africa we should celebrate the fact that when those heroes and heroines who showed bravery were mowed down, we ended up with a democratic dispensation, with a culture of human rights being enshrined in the Constitution. So when we deal with the issue of the born frees, history becomes crucial to educate them around this element so that they understand that what happened should not ever happen again, where there is dominance of one group by another in terms of a basis of race or in terms of religion. As you will know, that there are sometimes hate crimes that are promoted. These are the things we must fight against, and that means it starts from home. It comes to the issue of the schooling, the curriculum content, but also the behavior by ourselves as adults on what values we transmit to our children.
Right, so everyone has equal human rights. Thank you for your time. We have to leave it there. That was the Director General of the Department of Arts and Culture, Vusumuzi Mkhize.